Welcome everyone. I'm really happy to be here and being part of this Automation Edge event, right? And chatting with Tushar. Hey Tushar, thanks a lot for taking time out
Hi.
Saturday morning and talking to our audience, right? So, yeah, I think so. Before we just jump in, right? So, I think quick context for you. I think we have. Typically, I was just asking for the registrations, what kind of audience we have for today, right? So we have two kinds of audience. I think there are people who are already kind of working as QA professionals, right? Looking to kind of move to better career in terms of advancing their career, learning what's happening in the automation space, right? And we also have some part of the audience who are kind of aspiring to get into QA automation space, right? So we have both kind of audience, right? I'm sure I think your experience and insights will be valuable for both kind of audience, right? So I think let's get started, right? So I think you have 10 plus years of experience, right, across multiple MNCs, right? Dell, Wells Fargo, Walmart, all of that, right? So I think you've kind of grown through the ranks, right? And I'm sure you have seen evolution of SDLC, right? Software development lifecycle over the last 10 years. A lot of things have changed, right?
Yeah.
So I think let's start with kind of at least hearing your observation, right? I think if you just look back the last 10 years, right? What has changed, right, with respect to overall software development lifecycle, with respect to how people think about testing the products we develop for consumers, right? What has changed? I think that'll be a good starting point for us to dive into it.
Yeah, that's a quite an interesting question, Rathan. I think you're absolutely right. I think you, me, all of us who have been around 10 years or more, we have seen how the industry is kind of evolving, and especially in terms of tech. I think a decade back we were just making software products, but now I think with the introduction of a lot of technologies like AI, a lot of technologies like ML, the overall technology spree has gone to a different level altogether. The kind of products which are being built in the market, right? I mean, 10 years back, I think using a smartphone itself was the most fascinating thing we had in our lives. But look at now, I know everybody is kind of using products like Alexa, Siri in the phone. There's a lot of AI which we are all using intentionally, unintentionally in our daily lives. I think overall technology has changed a lot. The curve itself has gone completely high. And I think with that changing, the only thing from where I see, the only thing which happens is it brings us a lot of opportunities for us as engineers, us as the front face of technology teams. It brings us a lot of opportunities to learn, a lot of opportunities to kind of grow. And yes, so testing in terms, I mean, testing has become very wide. 10 years back, if I remember, the industry was more about having manual testers come to the office, pick up application, work on it, see if the application is working fine. The depth of understanding at which testing has gone now, I think it is vast. People are expected to test the application in a much more different ways. It's just not plain UI testing or just not plain database testing, but the industry is moving more towards SDETs, more towards having people who are more focused towards automation. And that's where you help these engineering teams to kind of keep moving faster, keep growing faster. So I think, testing itself has kind of taken a long ride in the last 10 years.
Got it. I think it'll be great, right? I think it'll be kind of great to narrate the story through your own experience, right? So could you just help us understand when you started your career, right? What was the nature of work, right? What you used to do? And then probably need not need to share a lot of specifics, but I think like what was the day-to-day activities used to be, right? How the role has evolved, right? One, I think with the industry changing, and also when you started growing in your responsibilities roles.
Right, absolutely. I can put some glimpse on that. So I think when I started my career, probably back in 2011, when I started my career, I started as a manual tester, and I had a lot of manual testing which I used to do for the initial first 1.5 year. But I was probably one of the blessed ones where I got the exposure towards automation testing much earlier in my career, somewhere when I was
like the manual testing you were doing, was it kind of domain heavy system where you had some domain specific knowledge?
It was. Okay. So yeah, in the initial phases when I started working, it was more of a banking system, and probably you would be able to relate, and a lot of people who will be able to relate. Most of the banking technologies used to work on something called IBM mainframe. back in those days. More heavy system on that. So the systems were used to be not so intuitive, and that was my first domain where I worked into. Where some domain experience is something which really helps, but that is something which you build on the job when you start working on it. I think technology is one thing which we can learn certainly even before we get into a job, but domain is something which probably you learn as you start getting involved in different kinds of products, different kinds of projects. That's what you start picking up the domain.
So you are doing a banking manual testing, right? That's where you started.
Yes, okay. That's where I started. I was doing a banking manual testing, and from there I moved on to a different project where I picked up on the retail space. I started working for Hilton Hotels, the global Hilton Hotels, which was a completely different domain for me, and I could see a complete difference. But one thing which stayed common across both the projects was my contribution and thought process which I had towards testing. So I think so being a QA, right, what you bring on the table is a non-developer mindset, where your approach towards any application, be it from any domain, be it any kind of application, your approach is to see how the user experience of the application is. Be it a banking application, be it a hotel booking site, or be it any other retail application. Your contribution is to ensure that your users have a good experience when they use the application. So that still remained constant, and the domains kept changing for me.
Got it. So in the second role, were you doing some part of automation? Like what technologies were started picking up that time?
So at that point, late in 2012, I think I started doing a POC on Selenium. That was the first time I did Selenium was fresh and hot in the market at that point of time. I had some background understanding on Java, so I started working doing a POC on Selenium. There were also some, the API world was more about SOAP, using SOAP APIs those days. And REST was still trying to shape up, and this was still not a very widely accepted. Most of the banking technologies were all SOAP API heavy. So I had some licensed tools which I was using, SOAP UI Pro and other API automation tools, API testing tools rather, not automation, API testing tools. Started doing a POC around Selenium, seeing how automation can be feasible. First thing was, it was way too new. You didn't had a lot of support like you have Crio and multiple other learning platforms today. You didn't had these support back then. It was all fresh new. You had to research a lot to kind of do a POCs and learn how the technology, how the tool really works. So that's why I started my career towards automation, and I have been in the automation journey since 2012.
How did the automation career evolve? I think I understand you started doing Selenium, bit of a exploration, right? How did the role evolve in terms of complexity and the tech stack? Like what was the next role from then?
Right. So after that, from the Dell project which I was working on the Hilton, where I did a lot of UI automation. It was purely on a UI automation which I was trying out over there in terms of POC. Then I moved to my next company, which was Wells Fargo, which was a core banking system, where if I tell in layman terms, it's pretty much what we do on net banking, the wire transfer payments, what we do. So I worked on a wire transfer payment, which was heavy on the backend side, but also had a little simple looking UI. So my automation exposure somehow grew over there, where I was exposed to API automation and see how API automation can be done better. I think even while we talk about the Crio curriculum, we talk about certain parts where we talk about rest assured. There were other couple of technologies back then where we had API automation. So that became new to me in terms of, I was doing some bit of UI. Then I came across API automation, and then API automation again itself is a very interesting space where you see how you operate on something which you don't see on the browser. It's all the backend automation. So it's again a different world, but a good learning experience. And from there on, I think eventually I moved on to Deutsche Bank, which was a complete automation testing role, where my role was only to do automation day in and day out. And that's
were you also involved in developing some frameworks there, or were you using existing frameworks?
Yes. So in Wells Fargo, I was still leveraging some open tools which were there to kind of do the API automation. But as soon as I moved to Deutsche Bank, that's where I started building a lot of heavy frameworks. I was more on the SDET role there. I used to build automation frameworks which were used by a lot of test automation engineers. These frameworks had a fairly simple approach, simple designs which could be adapted easily. where maintenance could be easy because again, the product I was working on in Deutsche Bank, there was a banking product which was rolled out across 35 countries. So every country had some different nitty-gritties which were incorporated over there. So overall, the application was big. But yeah, when you build automation on such applications, you start learning aspects of framework development on how to keep things simple, still leverage it to its full use. So a lot of design patterns, a lot of understanding comes into picture over there. Start learning that. And over there, I think, apart from UI and backend automation, my further exposure increased towards quite a lot of towards DevOps and database migration testing. Quite a lot of these things. My application was purely based on Pega. So I started building certain dashboards where we could, take care of certain infra components. I'm testing something in the QA environment. Is my environment up and running or not? Is my environment right? So all I could see is the scope of automation increasing. And automation itself, automation is not about Selenium. Selenium is a part of automation, but automation is a concept where you can reduce any kind of manual work which you are doing. And I think if we all stick to that, that's where a lot of value add comes to us individually in our career on terms of learning, and also in terms of what we contribute.
Got it.
And I think from there to Walmart, I think Walmart has been more of a completely a full stack QA role where Walmart doesn't have the concept of having different QA teams. It's you are tied to a product and you take care of end-to-end testing requirement. You do all the required manual testing, do all the required automation testing, and database migration project. And we moved from Azure to a SQL platform or to a different platform. All the database migration, a lot of performance testing. Everything is that the QA teams are kind of responsible to take care of that over there. So it's a complete different exposure. A lot of learning in terms of how a product works end to end functionally, and you learn the non-functional aspects of a system when you build a product. And that really helps. That really helps widen your entire thought process and horizon in terms of how a product is built and put in the market.
Amazing. I think it's quite a vast I think experience and journey, right? Thanks for kind of sharing. I think this really helps for people to think about, kind of visualize how potentially the career can shape up, right? So I think one interesting word you used, I want to just double down on, right? You talked about non-developer mindset, right? So a lot of people actually, when we talk to them, right, they think, should I do development? Should I do automation? What is good, right? Like I generally tell them there's something called what is good, right? It's about what do you want to do, right? And what do you think you can do well, right? So I think there's inherently there's a different approach, right? I think there are certain kind of mindset. People with certain kind of mindset can be successful as a developer, right? And people with certain kind of mindset can be really successful as I think SDETs, right? So I kind of see I've been a product manager for a long time, right? So I actually always seen SDETs as my close partner in crime, right? In bringing customer perspective to the table, right? So I think it'll be
you're absolutely right.
Good if you can actually throw some light on like how should someone think about kind of SDET role versus developer role and the non-developer mindset you highlighted. I think it's a good for this audience.
Absolutely. I think you brought out the right point. See, I think we talk about the different group of people who work on a product, right? You have product managers who work closely with the business. You have QAs who test the application, what we call testing, manual or automation. We have developers who actually build the application. But if you see the mindset really change, developers are people who are very close to tech in terms of, and they are building technology products day in, day out. But in a QA role, the benefit from where I see is the QA role is a role where you stick close to business, you stay close to process, and you stay equally close to tech with automation being involved over there. So it's a very leveraging role. And interesting point, I think, what you said, right? And I've also met a lot of people who come to me and say that there are a lot of development tools coming up. There's a lot of AI based tools coming up. Chat GPT coming up. Will it kind of reduce the scope of automation testing? So I think my only answer to them was, see, at the end of it, whatever technologies we use, we are building products. You are building Alexa, you are building a smartwatch, you're building a basic smartphone. You're just putting technology behind it. The difference between a product getting a 1-star rating or a 5-star rating, that is software testing. That is software testing to me, because that is where you represent the masses, you represent the entire user community who's going to use that product. You don't think from the angle where how I have built this product and what it should work. Rather, you think from a non-developer mindset where you represent the user community and think how I can use this application. It's a very simple example. If I am a developer, I develop a login page. I'll always go and test it with 2 or 3 combinations of login page.
Yeah.
But if you are a tester, you would think on how would 10 users at different education levels, layman, would use this application.
Yeah.
And you would parse in all possible combinations, some silly, some logical, but you would test it with all the possible boundaries to see if the application is robust or not. And that's the value add which we bring as QA, in the QA role, or as testing mindset, where you see how robust is the development code, how well it can stand on functional parameters, where it is working across different kind of users, and how the application can keep scaling up. Is my application good to be used for 10 people? Is it good to be used for 1,000 people? Is it good to be used by a lakh number of people? That's the kind of testing which you bring. So that's why it's a non-developer mindset. You don't only think about how the application is built or made and what it needs to be done, but you think it from a user mindset on what you expect from the application to be done and how it should be performing for a user experience to be good.
Yeah, great. I think this is very insightful. I think we try always having this conversation whenever someone asks this question. I think it's great to hear this from you as well, right? So I think moving on, right? So one thing I think you have seen a lot of organizations kind of moving from, let's say, a manual approach to kind of testing to kind of completely move towards SDET kind of a thought process, right? So it's a big cultural change, right, at an individual level as well as at an organization level, right? So what's been your observation or what's been your experience of teams and individuals moving from manual to automation, right? What is the kind of mindset change they should bring in themselves to kind of navigate and manage this change really well?
Right. See, I think one thing which I've felt is, a lot of people, when they try to switch from manual to automation, they define or they establish a restriction around themselves that they want to do UI automation. They want to go and learn this particular tool. And my 2 cents for people are, see, when you want to move closer to technology, which is from manual, you want to move more towards automation. See, always learn the technology. Don't learn tools. Tools come and go. And I've seen so many tools come and go. We talk about Selenium. Selenium is though it's a tool, but it's more of a platform which has evolved in terms of UI automation testing. There are so many tools which have been built which are on top of Selenium. So if you know Selenium, you know how a UI automation is done. If I know Java, for example, I know how object-oriented programming works. Tomorrow you can fit into any other programming. So, similarly, don't restrict your learning to tools. Restrict it towards technology. Learn the technology. If you learn a technology, you will always be on the safer side, where tools will come and go and you will always be able to adapt to them. And that's a very important aspect, because see, tools keep changing as we evolve. Tools keep changing. Similar example, if you know driving, it doesn't matter which vehicle, which brand I put you into, you will still be able to drive. So that should be the mindset when you switch from manual to automation. And don't restrict your contributions in a project. Don't think that my job is only to come and do UI automation. Identify opportunities. See what opportunities you have in your project where you can go and contribute with automation. Is there something which you can do as a stretch assignment for yourself? And those stretch assignments, that's where a lot of value add comes to you from your own learning point of view, and that really helps you transition from a manual testing role to a automation testing role.
Got it. I think, see, we talked about kind of mindset, right? But I think from a hard skills perspective, right? So what are the key skills and other qualities an aspiring automation engineer should actually think about, inculcate, should about kind of grow into, right? With the ever evolving the industry landscape, right? So
right. So I think see, in terms of skill set, I think one thing which goes very handy and which is more of a baseline to scale up yourself as an automation tester is have a good understanding on Java. So Java becomes a very, very important tool. I would not ask you to go and learn Java to an extent where you start building applications. Learn Java to an extent where you are able to take care of any kind of automation which is required. And see, when you talk about automation,
here we keep getting questions about Java versus Python, right? So do you have any thoughts, or is it just a choice?
See, first to quick answer, it's just a choice. But I would always suggest, see, when you want to learn something new, when I've taken a call to upskill myself, why would I not want to upskill myself, which has a wider pool of opportunities in the market rather than something which is still a comparatively narrower pool. So if I'm learning from a manual to, I'm switching from a manual to automation role, I would prefer to pick still Java, because that exposes me to a wide set of opportunities where Python still has certain restrictions. It is being used, but if you see the market pattern, Java has a much wider control in the market compared to any other programming language. So I would suggest switch to Java, learn Java. That exposes you to a wider pool of opportunities.
Okay. Yeah. Go on. Sorry. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. No, absolutely fine. So I think Java is one thing which comes really handy, because Selenium and all, they are more from a tool perspective, which you integrate with Java and do a lot of UI automation. But a lot of value at the stretch assignments, which I was telling you, which you can do in a project, take up certain smaller roles, certain smaller tasks, and automate. That's where Java comes really handy. That's where you can build a lot of Java utilities. You can build a lot of Java related automation stuff, which would really come really handy, and your overall understanding goes much better. And while you learn Java, I think one thing which is very important to focus on, I meet a lot of people in the mentorship sessions, and they come to me and asking me, how well should I understand data structures? How well should I understand collections? See, these are important to understand stuff, but before you go there, make your foundation very strong, because if you are switching, and if you are taking up classes where you want to understand Java, and to land up into a tier 1 company will never focus on how advanced concepts they focus on how well you understand the code which you write. They might give you a very simple program to remove duplicates from an array, but they would ask you to explain the 10 lines which you write over there, because what they want to understand is your thought process. Are you thinking the right way? Are you thinking the right logic? Syntax programming, that still can be built later. So I think focus on that, where you build the right amount of skill set with Java. Selenium as an automation tool will really come handy to you to understand how UI automation is done. And from a backend automation point, I think it's good to learn one tool, which is rest assured, and have minimal exposure at least towards the non-functional aspect of an application, which is the performance testing, load testing, how application behaves in terms of, on a big billion day, typically, how your application will behave. So it's important to understand that it works, how it works. So that's where, some concept of the performance testing, load testing would really help you. I think if we cover this much of a skill sets, you will be able to build a lot of knowledge on top of it as you grow. But I think this will be a good starter kit to kind of look forward to for the next 1 or 2 years, to kind of be at that mark, to know all these technologies.
I'm getting some audience questions about salary ranges, right?
Okay.
People's favorite. So,
yeah.
Do you mind actually? I think roughly, right? I think people have a notion about how does a lot of people don't know about the SDET salary ranges typically, right?
Correct.
I think of course it varies. If you could actually share a broad at least, somebody who's really qualified automation engineer, what are the typical entry level salaries someone can expect, right? And probably at 3 years and 5 years, how would it?
Certainly. So I think I wouldn't. So again, a quick disclaimer: my numbers might not be totally right over here, but this is more from my observation, which I have seen over the last 10 or 11 years. See, industry has also evolved in terms of how the payout has been, and especially in the last 2.5 years, the whole dimensions around the market have changed. It certainly depends around the companies which you're targeting. To be very honest, if you target companies which are tier 1 companies, which are like Amazon, Google, Intuit, Microsoft, if you target companies like these to start with, at a 3 or 5 years experience in terms of automation journey, your pay could be somewhere around 15 or around that to start with, or could be a little more than that. But if you target certain other service-based companies, which I have felt, the service-based companies go a little lower side of the pay. They have a little different model of payout. So I think somewhere around 6 to 7 and plus is what it can vary around. But I think people should not really worry about the pay packages until and unless your skill sets are right. Because I felt that IT is a very welcoming space, an unbiased space, where all that matters is how you perform in that room when you are in an interview. Nothing before that, nothing after that. So if you do really well, I think there are a lot of companies, and with the startup culture evolving so much, I think there are a lot of startups who kind of go on a very exorbitant range, pay you really high. Salaries go, I believe, somewhere around from 6 lakh of packages for a 3 to 4 year experience, somewhere from 6 to 7 lakh of packages per annum. It goes as high as 40 is what I have seen at that experience, based on the kind of companies you pick, based on the kind of companies you work for.
Got it. See, I think since you're talking about salary, right? One typical question I generally, whenever I do some mentorship calls, I get is, I'm working in automation. I'm working as a manual QA, right? They get paid because of the domain expertise they have. Probably they get paid slightly on the higher end, let's say like 10 to 15 lakhs as a manual QA, right? And when they think about kind of moving into automation, generally people have worry about, because I don't have an automation experience, would my salary grow? Would my salary not grow? Should I be okay with a similar salary or slightly lower salary also? Right? This is something, a dilemma I've seen a lot of people going through, right? Of course, it's a personal choice, right? I think it'll be good to share some kind of a framework. If you were them, how do you think about it? Yeah.
So I wouldn't think that way. If you choose to stay closer to technology, you will always be on the higher paying ends. The further you decide to stay from technology, I think that's where challenges occur for you. But if you are somebody who is either a developer or a tester, product functions differently. Product is itself a very different space on how things work. So itself a very high paying space. But in terms of QA role, if you're deciding, if you are somebody who's already earning about 10 to 15 lakhs an annum, and if you're a manual tester, and if you opt to move towards a SDET role or a QA role, I think certainly you should not be worried about the pay package, because the moment you decide to stay more closer to technologies, your pay will kind of go even better. It's always a incline graph where you go up. There's no decline when you try to choose to stay closer to technology and build a lot of test automation. So that always works out better for you.
Got it. Hey, thanks. I think probably I'll just go with my last question. I think we're almost on time, right? So I think we have a lot of people who are already working as a QA automation professionals and who are aspiring to get into as well, right? So I think we have shared a lot of insights about, I think, your own career journey. I think that is very insightful, right? And we talked about what skills they should look at, what mindset they should look at, which is more important, right? So I think what would be your kind of piece of advice for everyone in their upskilling journey and in their kind of planning their next career move?
Yes, I think see, whenever we decide to upskill, right, we decide based on the market trends. We decide on seeing how we can secure a future for ourselves for the next 5 or 8 years, and we do these things. But when you start your learning journey, learning journey is not a simple journey. You have to stay very focused. You have to stay patient towards what you are learning. One day you decide to learn automation, it will not be that after a week you will learn automation. It takes its own journey. You take a journey where you put in the right focus. What I've seen a lot of people do is they start with a journey, and in a month's time, when things get a little bit complicated, or you start learning some better or advanced concept, you kind of feel the heat, and you feel that this might not be my baby. This might not be something which I should be doing. Am I doing the right thing? See, if it was easy, it was not something which we needed some skilled professionals to do it. It is not easy. So when you take a call to upskill yourself, also take a call to stay very focused. Don't let that focus get diluted in that journey of learning. 6 to 8 months to 6 to 10 months is a fair enough time where you will spend your time, energy, and your focus to kind of build the right knowledge. And I think to learn anything, I think while in a journey to grow as from a manual testing to a QA automation testing role, I think there are two things which I feel are the key ingredients. One is having the right knowledge, where you know what you should learn. Second thing is you should put in the right practice towards it. Whatever you decide to learn, put in the right practice towards it. I might tell you verbally on how to drive a car, but that doesn't mean that you will start driving a car. Only when you get inside a car and start practicing it is when you will learn how to drive it. And that's where I think the practice comes very important. So whatever you decide to learn, Java, Python, Selenium, or any other tool, ensure you are also in the mindset to put in the right amount of practice, and have that patience for about 6 months with any new technology to kind of let it sink in and let it soak in, and learn, get up to the par where you start adding a lot of value. I think that's my thought overall, guys. So I think thank you so much for having me. But yeah, that's my last thought.
Thanks a lot, Tushar. I think this is great talking to you, right? I think amazing insight. I think I had fun interacting with you, right? I think hope
same here, absolutely
useful, right? Thanks a lot again for taking time out on Saturday.
Thanks a lot. Thank you so much, and wish you all a very good weekend, and wish you all a very good learning journey ahead. And it was fun having a chat with you, Ratna. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, folks. Yeah, bye bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye bye. Thanks.